The Xyrant Institute of Universal Biology was the crown jewel of intergalactic academia, its towering spires stretching into the infinite void of space. Creatures from across the galaxy roamed its expansive halls, their diverse forms and colors a kaleidoscope of biology's possibilities. Today, however, a particular visitor had sparked an unusual level of excitement and skepticism. A human. Lieutenant Dana Hayes stepped off the shimmering transport pod, her boots clinking against the polished metal floor. Her presence immediately drew attention. Beings with translucent skin, multiple limbs, or glowing appendages paused in their conversations to gawk at her. To them, she was unremarkable, small, bipedal, and oddly fragile-looking. Dana had been briefed on the cultural importance of composure, but it took all her discipline to keep her chin high under the scrutinizing gazes. She adjusted her Earth Standard issue uniform and followed the automated guide hovering beside her. "This is just like walking into a new base," she muttered to herself. But it wasn't. The academy was like nothing she'd ever seen. A blend of organic and mechanical architecture, pulsating with alien energy. In the grand amphitheater, Dr. ZYNNAR stood poised at the center of a semicircular room filled with eager students. His emerald-hued exoskeleton gleamed under the soft bioluminescent lights. The lecture topic for the day was one he had anticipated for years: Homo sapiens. "The human," he began, his resonant voice amplified for clarity, "is one of the most paradoxical species we have encountered. Physically unimpressive yet inexplicably resilient. Their world, a violent cradle of evolving dangers, has shaped them into survivors unlike any other." The audience of students murmured, a mix of skepticism and curiosity rippling through them. Among the crowd, Thraxus, a towering reptilian student with gleaming scales, leaned toward his gelatinous peer, Calyx. "I don't see what's so special about them," he hissed. "They're weak. They can't regenerate limbs or survive vacuum exposure." Calyx rippled with a faint glow of intrigue. "But they survived Earth. No species could thrive on a planet so hostile." The murmurs ceased as the doors to the amphitheater opened. Dana stepped in, guided by the automated assistant. The room fell into a hushed silence, and hundreds of alien eyes fixed on her. She felt like an exhibit in a zoo but held her ground. "This," Dr. ZYNNAR announced, gesturing toward her with a multi-jointed limb, "is Lieutenant Dana Hayes of Earth, a living representative of the anomaly we are here to study. Lieutenant, would you care to introduce yourself?" Dana cleared her throat. "It's an honor to be here," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "I'm here to assist in your research and, hopefully, learn a bit myself." Dr. ZYNNAR nodded approvingly. "We shall begin with a basic analysis. Lieutenant, please proceed to the examination chamber." The chamber was a marvel of alien engineering. Spherical in shape, it hummed softly as Dana stepped inside. Thin tendrils of light scanned her body, projecting a holographic representation of her anatomy into the center of the amphitheater. Gasps of surprise echoed as the aliens took in her internal structure. Bones encased in muscle, a single heart pumping blood, and a vast neural network connecting everything. "Such fragility," Thraxus muttered, his tail flicking dismissively. "One fracture, and they'd crumble." Dr. ZYNNAR raised a clawed appendage to silence him. "And yet, despite this perceived fragility, their species has endured plagues, wars, and planetary disasters. Let us observe why." As the analysis progressed, the hologram displayed Dana's immune system in action. A few hours prior, she had been exposed to a benign strain of an alien pathogen to assess her body's response. Already, her immune cells were swarming the invader with calculated precision, neutralizing it faster than anticipated. "This pathogen," Dr. ZYNNAR explained, "is harmless to us but devastating to most lifeforms. Yet, within mere hours, her system adapts. It is not brute strength that defines humans. It is their capacity to evolve internally." The students watched, fascinated. Calyx pulsed brighter. "It's like their bodies are learning," they said, their voice a melodic hum. "They improvise." Dana, unaware of the growing respect she was earning, began to feel faint. The pathogen, though harmless, was triggering a fever, a classic human response. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she wavered slightly before steadying herself. Dr. Zynnar noticed immediately. "Lieutenant Hayes, are you unwell?" "It's just a fever," Dana replied, brushing it off. "My body's fighting the infection." "This is normal." The students exchanged puzzled glances. To them, illness was a sign of failure, a prelude to death. Yet here was a human treating it as routine. "Remarkable," Zynnar said. "You endure discomfort as a means to adapt. Pain becomes a tool for survival." The session ended with Dana being escorted to a recovery pod, her fever already subsiding. In the amphitheater, the students remained, buzzing with questions and theories. Thraxis, begrudgingly impressed, leaned toward Calyx. "Maybe there's more to them than I thought." Calyx pulsed softly. "Perhaps we have much to learn from them after all." And thus, the first lesson on human resilience began to reshape the galaxy's perception of Earth's most enduring species. The medical lab of the Xyrant Institute of Universal Biology was a testament to intergalactic technological prowess. Walls shimmered with shifting hues of data displays, and tendrils of organic cables pulsed softly as they connected alien diagnostic tools to a central core. Lieutenant Dana Hayes lay on a medical platform surrounded by students of varying shapes and sizes, their focus intent on understanding the human anomaly. Professor Enwentar, a senior immunologist with iridescent skin that rippled in thought, floated toward the display. "Observe," he said, his voice melodic but commanding. A holographic projection of Dana's immune system materialized, magnified to show the microscopic battle raging within her. The alien pathogen, a shimmering orb of alien microbes, was being swarmed by her white blood cells. This pathogen, Enwentar explained, is a variant that has devastated countless species across the galaxy. Its adaptability has allowed it to bypass nearly every defense system we've encountered. Yet, the human immune system is dismantling it with surprising efficiency. Thraxis, the skeptical reptilian student, narrowed his eyes. "Perhaps it's luck. Or a fluke." "Luck?" Calyx's gelatinous form quivered with incredulity. "Look at how her cells are analyzing and countering the invaders. Her immune system isn't just defending. It's learning." Dana, seated upright despite the remnants of her fever, listened intently. "We've faced worse on Earth," she interjected. "Diseases like smallpox and the Black Death wiped out millions before we adapted. Our immune systems evolved, and so did our minds. We learned to create vaccines and treatments." The students exchanged looks of disbelief. Evolution and technological ingenuity working in tandem were foreign concepts to many species present, whose survival relied purely on inherited biological defenses. Enwentar pointed to a cluster of Dana's white blood cells on the display. "Notice their response time. Faster than any I've documented. And yet, humans endure significant discomfort during this process. Fevers, pain, fatigue. Why?" Dana shrugged. "It's how our bodies work. The fever is our body's way of creating a hostile environment for the pathogen. Pain? Well, that's just part of the deal." Thraxis snorted, his tail thumping against the floor. "Pain as a survival mechanism? How inefficient." "Not inefficient," Dana countered, leaning forward. "Pain teaches us. If something hurts, we avoid it next time. It's how we learn to adapt to dangers we've never faced before." The room fell silent as the students digested her words. For beings whose evolution had often rendered them immune to physical suffering, the idea that pain could be an advantage was revolutionary. Enwentar broke the silence. "Her fever has nearly subsided, and the pathogen is eradicated. Most species would require intervention or perish outright. Yet, she has recovered in hours." Calyx vibrated with excitement. "It's not just their biology. It's their mindset. They accept discomfort as part of survival. Or they're reckless," Thraxis muttered, though his tone carried less conviction than before. Dana smirked. "Maybe, but it works." As the session concluded, the students left with a newfound respect for human resilience. For the first time, they began to grasp that survival wasn't just about strength or immunity. It was about adaptability, learning, and the will to endure. The Xyrant Institute's simulated disaster zone was one of the most advanced training environments in the galaxy. Designed to test the physical and psychological limits of any species, the simulation consisted of multiple environments, ranging from desert wastelands to chaotic cities ravaged by natural disasters. Today, it would test something different: human resilience under extreme mental stress. Dana Hayes stepped into the simulation chamber, her heartbeat steady, though the tension in her stomach was undeniable. She had agreed to participate in this trial to provide the students with a better understanding of what made humans so resilient. But she knew this simulation would push her limits. The room faded away, replaced by the image of a crumbling city block. Buildings were in ruins, fires burned in the distance, and the sky was thick with ash. The air was suffocating, and every step seemed to be a struggle against gravity itself. Simulation activated. A voice boomed from the speakers. You are stranded in a city devastated by an unknown catastrophe. Your mission is to survive and assist the injured. Dana surveyed the area, spotting the broken forms of simulated civilians scattered among the debris. Her training kicked in as she methodically assessed the situation. Locate shelter, gather resources, check for survivors. She began to move toward the closest group of survivors, even as the sound of approaching sirens and explosions rang out in the background. At the same time, the observation deck above was filled with students from across the galaxy, watching intently. Thraxus, Calyx, and the others were silent as they observed the humans' every move. This is pure chaos, Thraxus muttered. It's like a war zone. Calyx's soft voice responded, yes, but notice how she's not panicking. She's focused. It's impressive. Dana crouched by a simulated survivor, assessing the person's condition and applying basic first aid. The chaos around her continued. Explosions, simulated cries for help, and an ever-looming sense of danger. But she maintained her focus, her mind running through the training she had received on Earth. She spoke to the survivor calmly, even as her own body began to show signs of exhaustion. Sweat dripped down her forehead, and her heart raced, but she pushed forward. She couldn't afford to give up. Calyx, watching from above, was entranced. She's not just surviving. She's adapting, thinking through each step. She's not letting the panic take over her mind. Thraxus was less convinced. But it's a simulation. No real danger. She's not facing the true pressure of survival. Isn't this the true test? Calyx countered. How they handle the psychological pressure, the stress. The real enemy is not the surroundings, but their own minds. The simulation began to escalate. A building collapsed nearby, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. Dana shielded her eyes and ran toward the collapsed site, pulling out a scanning device to locate trapped individuals. Despite the rising danger, her mind stayed sharp, processing every bit of information around her. Your mind is your most valuable resource in a survival situation, Dana had told them earlier. If you panic, you can't think. And if you can't think, you can't survive. The holographic countdown at the top of the chamber began ticking down. 10 minutes remaining. Her body ached, fatigue setting in, but Dana pushed past it, using her willpower to ignore the pain. When the countdown reached 0, the simulation ended, and the cityscape vanished, replaced by the cold, sterile walls of the academy. Dana collapsed to her knees, gasping for air, the weight of the experience still settling on her. Professor Nyantar's voice filled the room. This was a test of psychological endurance. Lieutenant Hayes has shown extraordinary mental fortitude. Her ability to compartmentalize stress, focus on problem-solving, and maintain her composure in the face of overwhelming odds is beyond remarkable. The students were silent, absorbing what they had witnessed. For most, survival meant physical endurance, the ability to withstand harm. But what they had seen in Dana Hayes was something entirely different. A human's ability to persevere not just physically, but mentally, in the face of chaos. Thraxus was the first to speak, his voice softer than usual. Underestimated humans. Calyx nodded, their form glowing faintly. It's not just about their bodies. It's their minds that make them powerful. As the group filed out of the chamber, Dana remained seated for a moment, catching her breath. She had survived the test, but more importantly, she had shown the students something that even they couldn't fully comprehend: the power of the human mind to adapt, endure, and thrive in situations that seemed impossible. The final test would be different. Dana Hayes had braced herself for many challenges during her time at the Zyron Institute, but nothing could have prepared her for the unprecedented scenario that awaited her in the alien training arena. The previous simulations had been mentally and physically demanding, but this test would push her into uncharted territory, a challenge designed to make her confront her deepest fears. The chamber was vast, its floor a reflective black surface that seemed to ripple with an otherworldly energy. The walls were smooth, featureless, and the air hummed with the faint pulse of an unknown force. As Dana stepped inside, a voice echoed from the walls. "Welcome, Lieutenant Hayes. You are about to face a trial that will test your survival instincts beyond all others. You will confront what you fear most. Your challenge will be to navigate your deepest anxieties and emerge unscathed." Dana's heart skipped a beat. She had trained for many things in her life: combat, disaster relief, survival tactics, but never had she been forced to face the raw vulnerability of fear itself. The voice continued, its tone dispassionate. "You have 5 minutes to prepare. Your survival will depend not only on your ability to adapt, but on your courage to face what you cannot control." The lights dimmed, and Dana's mind raced. She had learned to suppress fear throughout her career: fear of death, of failure, of the unknown. But now she was being asked to confront it head-on. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the worst. This was not about strength or agility. It was about overcoming the instinct to flee. The chamber around her shifted. A dense fog materialized, and the temperature dropped. Shadows moved at the edges of her vision, and the air seemed to pulse with the thrum of her heartbeat. Dana felt a sudden chill, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Her surroundings seemed to close in around her. A figure emerged from the fog, tall and menacing. It was a perfect replica of her worst fear: the face of a colleague she had lost during a dangerous mission years ago. The memories flooded her mind: the moment of his death, the helplessness she had felt, and the guilt that had haunted her ever since. The vision before her was almost too real, too vivid, to be dismissed. "Come, Lieutenant," the figure said, its voice echoing her own words from that fateful day. "You didn't save me. You failed." Her breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen, the guilt threatening to overwhelm her. But then, something shifted. She had faced loss before. She had learned to live with it, to move past it. The people she had lost weren't gone. They were a part of her. Her strength had come from accepting that, not running from it. Dana forced herself to take a step forward, her legs shaky but determined. "No," she whispered. "I didn't fail. I carry you with me every day. You're not gone." The figure flickered and vanished into the fog, leaving her alone once more. The chamber seemed to exhale, the oppressive weight of fear lifting slightly. But the trial wasn't over. The surroundings shifted again. This time, the walls stretched upward, and the floor dropped away beneath her. The sensation of falling gripped her stomach, and she was suspended in midair. A crushing fear of heights overcame her. She had always hated the feeling of being out of control, of being at the mercy of forces beyond her comprehension. But this was different. She was no longer a passive participant. She was still alive, still standing. "I can do this," Dana muttered to herself, repeating the mantra she had relied on during countless missions. "I'm in control." Slowly, the feeling of falling dissipated as the chamber stabilized, the sensation replaced by a calm certainty. The walls returned to normal, and the lights brightened once again. A single door appeared at the far side of the room. "You have passed," the voice said. Dana stepped toward the door, her heart still racing but her mind clearer than it had been before. She had faced her deepest fears, not by defeating them, but by accepting them, by confronting the emotions that had once threatened to break her. As the door opened, she emerged into the calm of the observation room, where the alien students awaited her. Professor Enwayantar stood at the front, his eyes reflecting a rare sense of respect. "Lieutenant Hayes," he began, his voice softer than usual, "you have shown us more than just the strength of the human body. You have shown us the power of the human spirit, the ability to face the unknown, to confront what is terrifying, and to rise above it." Thraxis, his reptilian face betraying a mixture of awe and disbelief, nodded slowly. "Humans, they do not simply survive. They grow. They evolve, even in the face of their own fears." Calix's soft voice echoed in agreement. "You are not just survivors. You are adapters. You turn your greatest weaknesses into your greatest strengths." Dana smiled faintly, her exhaustion evident but her spirit undiminished. She had passed the final test, and in doing so, she had shown the aliens something profound. Humanity's greatest strength was not its physical abilities or technological advances, but its unyielding will to face the darkest parts of itself and come out stronger. As the students filed out of the room, Dana remained still, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She had learned something important as well. Sometimes, survival was not about overcoming the world. It was about overcoming the limits you placed on yourself.